All right, folks, we're diving into Celestial City Fantasy, which is essentially the rebranded Leviathan's Fantasy, a hero management game reminiscent of Majesty 2. They delisted Leviathan's Fantasy from Steam and brought it back under a new name with some graphical updates. Now that doesn't sit right with me, and I plan to check it out for about an hour and then possibly request a refund. Feels a little sketchy how they handled this relisting without any clarification. Let's take a look at what we're dealing with. We're exploring the Heritage Shop, where we've got some DLC options like Xianyuan's and Mechanical Crisis. These look like they're just graphical upgrades from the original. We'll pick some collections and research notes, maybe throw in some Kickstarter straw mages and basic materials for a quick start. This game's got a Majesty vibe, hiring adventurers and managing them. The audio's a bit overpowering, so let's dial that down. So far, it's looking identical to the original game with a few visual tweaks. Seems like we're starting with the exact same opening sequence, which is pretty telling. Let's keep exploring. We're in the Heritage Shop interface, looking at a selection of items under Item and Equip. We've got 165 Godsend points left, so let's be smart about our choices. The Research Note 4 is priced at 30 points, and other items range from 10 to 35 points. We need a good start, so let's focus on the essentials like the Kickstarter straw mages and some basic materials. Shifting over to the initial building and initial resource sections. We notice items like stone at 10 points. It's crucial to set up a solid foundation. Now about the sound, it's way too loud. We'll adjust those volume settings. The game hasn't changed much from the original, just a few graphical updates, and the opening is the same. We've got no workers, so building a dormitory is our first step. Not thrilled about revisiting all this, especially with placeholder text issues. The game's concept is neat, but it doesn't quite reach the level of Majesty 2. They've added text-to-speech voices, which is a neat touch, but my interest is waning. The UI looks slightly improved with bigger buttons, but the content remains identical to the first game. We've got no workers on board, so our first priority is setting up a dormitory. Honestly, this feels like a bit of a chore to revisit. There's placeholder text lingering in the upper left, which isn't promising at all. It's a neat concept, but this type of game doesn't have a massive following. Majesty 2 probably offers just as much entertainment. The text-to-speech voices are a nice addition, but my enthusiasm's waning. The UI's got bigger buttons, but the content's a carbon copy of the original. As we look at the vibrant fantasy landscape, we're prompted to rotate buildings. Thatched roof structures are popping up, signaling progress. We need to place a quarry and lumberyard, but the translation issues are still present. This encourages me to give it a try and then maybe consider a refund. The shady relisting without explanation adds to my hesitation. We've got a merchant interface to explore, but with this kind of grind and lackluster tech tree, it's hard to stay engaged. Let's keep moving and see how this unfolds. We're back in this familiar fantasy village scene. It's the same content as the first game, just with a different coat of paint. Translation quality hasn't improved, it's actually worse. This doesn't sit well, especially with how the game was delisted and came back without any clear explanation. Feels like they're trying to pull a fast one. The UI isn't any better either, and we need to unlock the research center, which is a hassle. The grind is real with this tech tree, and enthusiasm is fading fast. We're crafting buildings and placing them down, but it feels like a chore. The sound is still overpowering, like in some other games from Chinese publishers. The volume's cranked up to 150% with unskippable scenes, which is just baffling. Let's get our Adventurers Guild built so we can start recruiting. But first, we'll turn that music off. It's unbearable. With the volume settings down to practically nothing, it's manageable. We've settled our adventurers, and we've got a lab ready. Let's keep pushing forward and see where this takes us, even if it feels like a retread. We've got some confusion with our workers. The interface claims we have none, but it's just buggy. If you try to assign the max workers, it'll say you don't have enough, even when you do. That's a shame. Meanwhile, the sound remains painfully loud, a trend in some games from Chinese publishers. Immortal Life also has those unskippable, ear-splitting cutscenes. It's baffling why they'd think anyone wants that. We've built our Adventurers Guild, so let's get recruiting. First, we'll silence that obnoxious music. I've turned it down to almost nothing now, so it's manageable. Without background music, that's fine. I'll add it back in later. Our adventurers are settled, and we've got a lab ready to go. We're seeing a vibrant fantasy village, with villagers ready for work but no careers yet. Stone and gold resources are plentiful. We've got these wooden buildings on the grassy area, and we're looking at placing more. Let's focus on getting our trading house up and crafting more dormitories. We're waiting on adventurers to arrive. We've got to boost their favorability, which dropped unexpectedly. Without opening the portal, we're stuck for now. Let's see if we can work around that. We're dealing with the game flow issues here. The early game setup is dragging because we haven't opened the portal yet. Our adventurers can't head out, which is frustrating. Fortunately, the default treasure portal is accessible. Zeus should start gathering resources soon, but this initial phase is cumbersome. It takes too long to get going, which could be fixed with some tweaks to improve the early game experience. Let's focus on crafting more dormitories since we're underprepared for the influx of villagers. We need to boost favorability for our adventurers, which annoyingly dropped. Without opening the portal, we're stuck. Thankfully, we've got access to the portal now, and we can begin by placing bounties, similar to Majesty 2's gameplay. This involves setting tasks for adventurers, adding a layer of strategy. Let's tackle this head-on, assigning bounties to clear out creatures. We can make improvements to streamline and enhance the gameplay experience early on. As we progress, We'll continue to strategize and optimize our village setup, ensuring we stay on top of resources and villager productivity. Alright folks, we've opened our default treasure portal, which means Zeus should start collecting resources soon. This early game setup is dragging, and it could really use some improvements to speed things up. Let's push forward. We know the drill from the original Leviathan's fantasy game. Our task now is to assign bounties like in Majesty 2, which adds a strategic layer to the gameplay. We'll put some bounties down to start clearing out creatures and streamline the flow. We're looking at a vibrant landscape with a glowing portal surrounded by rocks and trees. Our quest, titled Portal, is detailed on the right, with Treasure Island featured. The usual interface elements like list, char, and storage are displayed in the corner. As we focus on our fantasy village, the Adventurer Guild stands out, highlighting its importance. Resources are displayed on the right, and the scene's natural lighting brings everything to life. Now, let's get our adventurers moving and make sure we're set up for success. We'll continue strategizing and optimizing our village setup, ensuring we stay on top of resources and productivity. This gameplay concept really strikes a chord with me. As a huge fan of Majesty, I'm keeping an open mind about this game, despite the publisher's lack of communication and the game's delisting issues. It's important to remember that Chinese developers may not prioritize the Western market or have access to platforms like Steam discussions. If updates falter, it can be frustrating, but we can still appreciate the core ideas. The UI has seen some improvements. The capture display is clearer, offering vital information about our current island. We're attached to this Leviathan, our gigantic companion, which will upgrade and feed later in the game. Unfortunately, we haven't unlocked those features yet. Now let's talk about the tech tree interface. It could use a lot of work in how we interact with it. The current setup feels clunky, and streamlining it would enhance the overall experience. The crafting screen shows potential with its vertical layout, but a more intuitive approach would be beneficial. Let's keep moving forward and see how we can leverage these elements to build our city effectively. We're diving into the gameplay here, and this concept has really caught my attention. As a big fan of Majesty, I'm keeping an open mind about this game, even if the publisher's communication hasn't been stellar. It's worth noting that Chinese developers might not focus on the Western market or have access to platforms like Steam discussions. This can be frustrating if updates lag, but the core ideas still hold promise. The UI has seen some improvements. The capture display now clearly shows essential details about our island. We're attached to this Leviathan, our colossal companion, which will upgrade and feed later. Unfortunately, those features aren't unlocked yet, but there's something to look forward to. The tech tree interface needs work. Interaction feels clunky, and streamlining it would enhance the experience. The crafting screen has potential with its vertical layout, but it could be more intuitive. Let's harness these elements to build our city effectively. The foundation interface and the vibrant landscape with thatched roof buildings are our next focus. We'll ensure that we're laying down more dorms and keeping our setup efficient. We're diving right into the mechanics here. Our research process involves crunching materials in the lab, but the constant clicking to unlock elements feels unnecessary. Streamlining this process would enhance the experience, allowing us to focus on the more interesting aspects, like secret technology decisions. The good news is that, compared to the original game, Leviathan's fantasy has improved with features like Auto Eat and Auto Lab, which automatically process resources. That's a big step forward. Right now, we've got some adventurers joining us. We're opting for the purple adventurers to suit our strategy. Our basic setup is coming together, and we're ensuring we're laying down more dorms to keep things efficient. It's important not to be too harsh on this kind of game because it's quite rare. The developers have been vague about the reasons for the game's delisting, but they've re-released it with a discount. Despite keeping things under wraps, they've been at this for 2 years, showing commitment to this niche genre. It's a balancing act between appreciating this unique type of game and weighing personal frustrations with its re-release. The developers kept things vague about why the game was delisted, a common trait in some business cultures where details aren't freely given. Instead, they offered the same game at a discounted price, showing they've been committed to this niche for 2 years. It's a rare type of game, which means it has potential but also room for exploitation by less ethical developers. If you're into Majesty-like games, this could be worth the $5 price tag, but weigh that against any personal frustrations with the re-release. We're clearing the path for our first boss battle against the crab. Progressing through these quests is necessary, but could use some polish. A dynamic approach using AI to generate quest scenarios would be more engaging than the current rigid format. Imagine a quest where a character needs something from a cave, and AI crafts the narrative and quest path. Back in the city, we're recruiting more adventurers. We're aiming for level 3 quickly, because feeding the Leviathan, crucial for its growth, isn't straightforward yet. We're stuck with repetitive clicks to unlock basic elements, which could be simplified to keep us engaged with the main action. We're looking at a vibrant beach scene, surrounded by dark tents and a glowing portal. Our quest list includes tasks like city, wild resources, and honor token, with lively figures and palm trees adding to the atmosphere. As we move forward, let's focus on crafting. We've got field buildings like the lumberyard, quarry, and iron mine, essential for our island setup. The workshop is crucial for Leviathan operations, producing items for sale and accommodating adventurers and tourists. This blend of mechanics reminds us of majesty, which keeps the game intriguing despite its rarity. We're aiming for level 3 swiftly to feed the Leviathan and boost its growth. As we navigate, we're tasked with harvesting chaos energy from islands using specialized buildings. This involves setting up structures to plunder resources while completing quests like defeating 1,000 ants or fishmen. These activities yield raw resources, refining our city building strategy. Our target is clear: place the quarry and lumberyard as indicated in our quest panel, while keeping an eye on our honor token count. Let's continue refining our city effectively, making use of the lush landscape and available resources. We've maxed out our S-Class slots and our Leviathan load, so let's establish a guard order around this area. This should help level up our crew. There's a neat improvement here with auto-sorting for unassigned characters, a step forward from the first game. When characters are assigned to the garrison, they'll stick around and act as default guards for our fires of civilization, taking out anything nearby without needing a specific bounty. Leveling up our characters can feel a bit grindy, especially early on when we're repeatedly gathering low-tier resources. Clearing the map is a time-consuming task, taking several hours, but it pays off by letting us gradually build up our city. The addition of auto-research is a fantastic feature, helping to alleviate some of that early grind. To sum it up, I came in ready to refund this game, but after diving deeper, I've reconsidered. There's something here worth exploring further. Despite the initial frustrations, I'm inclined to give it another shot and see how it unfolds. Let's take a closer look at these niche games. We've maxed out our S-class slots and the Leviathan load. Setting up a guard order around the area should help level up our crew effectively. The auto-sorting feature for unassigned characters is a solid improvement from the first game. Once characters are assigned to the garrison, they hang out and take care of nearby threats as default guards, contributing to our fires of civilization. Leveling up characters, especially early on, can feel grindy with repetitive tasks and low-tier resource gathering. Clearing the map is time-consuming, but it gradually builds up our city. The addition of auto-research is a great feature, easing some of the grind. Initially, I considered refunding the game, but after diving deeper, it's worth exploring further. Let's get our high-level characters set up and see how it unfolds. As we look at this fantasy game interface, featuring a vibrant beach and quest to guard an area, we encounter characters like Luigi and Ling Warming. The game's charm lies in its atmospheric design, reminiscent of Majesty-style town management, but without veering into idle clicker territory. We'll see how this celestial city fantasy evolves. We're diving into these niche games, specifically this fantasy game set in a vibrant coastal environment. It's got a bit of that Majesty vibe, managing adventurers in a town, but without falling into the idle clicker category like those Shop Titans clones. Sure, it shares some similarities, but it stands out with its unique aesthetic. We've maxed out our S-class slots, and the Leviathan load is full. Setting up a guard order around this area will help level up our characters efficiently. The auto-sorting feature for unassigned characters is a welcome improvement, letting them serve as default guards for our fires of civilization. It adds a layer of strategy as they handle nearby threats. Leveling characters early on can feel like a grind due to repetitive tasks, but clearing the map gradually builds our city. Auto-research is a fantastic addition, easing that grind.